From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hello again. Welcome to another edition of Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis. It's been a big week in the city of Chicago because 113,867 Chicagoans teamed into the polling places to vote for 14.
Sarcastic now, Ken?
I'm starting out on a sarcastic note, Russ. Yes, indeed. Well, we can't blame the electorate. I'm sure that's not the right way to go. But we will discuss the electorate and what happened in this week's runoff contests, the 14 of them that happened in Chicago, and a whole bunch of other things too. Not the least of which is that I'm fascinated by the fact that Mayor-elect Emanuel's hand-picked police superintendent has said no because he wanted $400K to come to Chicago. We'll talk about that and a few other things on the program today with Delmarie Cobb, who's joining us today, political consultant and old friend of the show. We brought the panel back together again. This was the group that we sat and analyzed all of these after the first round elections and said, hey, we got to get back together afterwards. So they made a commitment. They did it. Thank you very much for being here. And that, of course, includes Carol Felsenthal, Chicago Magazine blogger for The Hill, and just a frequent commentator about things in Chicago. And from Nadig Newspapers, an election lawyer and other kind of lawyer, Russ Stewart joining us today, guru of the numbers. Look at that pile of papers in front of him there. He's got all kinds of data to share with us, I'm sure, today. So
hours worth, Ken. Hours worth. Yes, right.
So, if there are headlines coming out of these elections on Tuesday, apart from the fact that almost nobody participated in them, did anything important happen?
I think the 36th ward was probably the key, the most important election, because in that ward, thuggery was defeated. This is Bill Banks, this is Jim DeLeo. Their handpicked candidate was John Rice. John Rice lost 35% of his vote. This is a rather shabby ward in certain areas. There's a lot of condo developments, a lot of newer houses, but a lot of older bungalows. People were always under the thumbs of their precinct captains. They were fearful that if they didn't vote like they were told, they wouldn't get their service, they wouldn't get their favor, they wouldn't get their garbage can.
Where are we talking about here? Let's just let people know geographically what we're talking about.
This is Galewood, Montclair, the Cumberland Corridor on the far northwest side, North Avenue, north to roughly Belmont Avenue. It's got Grand Avenue.
But on the far west end of the city.
Yes, the Brickyard Shopping Center. People always did what they were told, and John Rice was the appointed alderman. He was Bill Banks' choice. Banks and DeLeo have almost $1 million between them in their campaign accounts. I mean, Banks was a former zoning committee chairman. This was a ward where the power told the people, not the people had the power. This time around, Nick Sposato, he inferred that organized crime had an influence factor in that particular ward. He had robocalls. Frank Calabrese was on Fox News saying that the organized crime had influence in the 36th Ward Democratic Organization. In a major upset, Nick Sposato won.
And it is interesting because he had no money. He had no backing of anybody. He had some firefighters, because he is a fireman, right? He's a firefighter. And he had some firefighters going around helping him, but that was pretty much it. And
Rahm did this was one of the interesting Rahm facts. And Rahm, he may not be the emperor, as it says on the front page of the Sun-Times today.
He doesn't look good in a toga, but we don't know. Nobody's photoshopped one on him yet, but that'll happen later today, I'm sure.
But the election is very much connected to Rahm. He lost 3 of the races in which he participated, but in this particular race, he never gave the dough.
That's right, he didn't fund them. He didn't fund them.
Right.
It's interesting because everybody
But Goldner, the For a Better Chicago, which is that organization, I guess it's a PAC, will not reveal the identity of its donors. It gave money to Rice, but Rahm withheld the money. Sposato said in
Get used
an
to that
interview,
name, you'll be hearing it a lot
right,
more.
I'm glad for that, but he said in an interview that his wife had put a lawn sign out for a candidate that the big guys in the 36th Ward didn't want, and she was asked to take it down. So I think John Cass's column today was interesting, and then Mark Brown in the Sun-Times also jumped into that.
But I was going to say, Rahm had a lot of influence in this election. I mean, and it's a barometer as to what kind of mayor he's going to be. I mean, as you said, he may not have come out directly for Rice, but Greg Goldner did. Yeah. And Greg Goldner, if you look at where they gave money, even as I was talking earlier about the 17th ward, I mean, they gave money in that ward. And these are people who are compliant. And Latasha Thomas is compliant. She has never done anything to speak of in the city council, but when you look at the kind of support she got, Daley came out and they opened 2 Walmarts in her ward for groundbreaking, a parade and everything. Who was the face of the Walmart fight? It certainly wasn't Latasha Thomas. Right. It was Anthony Beale and Howard Brookins. But the groundbreaking is for Latasha Thomas. Rahm comes out and does a get out the vote rally. Greg Goldner gives her money. I mean, they outspent their opponent almost 13-1 and still only won by 300 votes. So
you have the SEIU and the unions were heavily funding some of these candidates. Plus you had the Rahm organization and For a Better Chicago. So you had 2 competing people, and you had the same candidates getting money from both sides. So
but
where will their loyalties lie right now?
And from business. I don't want to go too far beyond. I just want to bring one thing up, because there's been a lot of talk about, Rahm Emanuel lost the ward, Rice, the 36th ward, because he had endorsed Rice. But I'm wondering if the fact that he actually sat the race out was a way of quietly and implicitly sending a message to the voters of the 36th ward: I don't care if you don't vote for this guy.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a lot of the people who, it appears that a lot of people who voted the first time around for Rahm Emanuel switched and didn't vote for Rice this time.
The election was a referendum on John Rice and Bill Banks. I think that Rahm was very peripheral in this entire race.
Right.
And DeLeo, And people just rejected the status quo. They said, enough of these thugs, get these thugs out of here.
Do you think if that mob son hadn't appeared on TV, I was thinking that maybe Rice lost because of that? That was dramatic.
That was
the kind of stuff that catches attention.
I was Sposato's lawyer. I was in court because Rice sued Sposato, saying that he was accusing him of criminal activity. And the judge said there's something called the First Amendment. When you have a right to make robocalls, you can't take and suppress freedom of speech.
All right, 36, we've analyzed that to death. I don't know if we can get any further with that. Delmarie, the thing that really was interesting to me was the ascension of Mayor Sawyer's son, Roderick Sawyer, victorious in the 6th ward. By this election, there was pretty heavy turnout. 10,000 people turned out to vote in that.
But that's typical for some of the, for 6th ward, gets a good turnout. 8th ward gets a good turnout, 21st ward gets a good turnout. There's some wards on the south side that you're going to get a good turnout because the people are engaged.
Yeah. But now this ward, I mean, Eugene Sawyer, the former mayor, was alderman there for something like 12 years or something.
16.
Right? 16 years, sorry. So this is their ward. And I guess they just rightly decided it was time to go back and reclaim it. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's 47 years old and he just decided to run for the first time. So, I mean, I guess he decided this was his time. And because of, one, you were in a anti-incumbent climate. That's one. 2, the fact that Fredrina Lyle voted for the parking meter deal, that's 2. But, that didn't work in every ward. I mean, Latasha Thomas voted for the parking meter deal and was said and quoted in the newspaper Sunday that she tells her people at least it's less than what you're paying downtown. And so it doesn't necessarily translate in all wards, but it did translate in this ward. And one of the reasons why is because there are some wards that are independent, that are perceived as independent. And they are, I mean, in terms of the south side, some of those independent wards, certainly the 6th ward is one and the 21st ward is one.
But you also have Senator Burris too. Roland Burris was he?
He supported Rod.
He was a supporter.
That victory speech that Sawyer gave, I thought it was moving when he spoke about his father. And Eugene Sawyer was a man who was respected and liked very much, I think, by people in the city, was by me at that time. And I thought there was something really very poignant about that. And then there's Roland Burris, right, in the camera angle, and you know better than I, but I thought that made a difference too. The vote totals were very close.
Well, Roland
was
has
he the
a good.
independent? Was Rod the independent candidate, or was that a factional race? Was it one faction against the other?
Yeah, it was just I think it was a factional race.
I mean, he was a supporter of the incumbent, wasn't he, at one time?
Yeah, he was. I mean, yeah, they're all, and that's why I'm saying they were all friends. They grew up together.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so it's not like one person didn't know the other. Everybody in that ward knows everybody. I mean, you come out of Mayor Sawyer and then Roland Burris. I mean, the 6th Ward is very proud to have had a mayor and to have had a U.S. Senator in their backyard. They're very proud of that. And so those names, he started out with a high name recognition. It's not like he was someone who just decided, I'm going to run, and had nothing going for him.
Well, moving on, how about the 45th Ward?
How about that 45th Ward, huh?
George Bush, Sarah Palin, Bill Brady, a Republican.
Hold that so the camera can get a
Right,
shot of
right.
that. Now that's
Which direction, over here?
This was the ward where the alderman, the original choice of the alderman was roundly defeated, and you ended up with 2 guys who were kind of relatively unknown, and the pivot point became this issue of whether John Garrido is a Republican.
Has Republican values and supports the
In
failed
the 36th
policies
ward,
of George Bush.
In the 36th ward, he was a mobster. In this ward, he's a Republican.
But
Tried to
Rahm
nationalize it.
why didn't Rahm endorse in that race?
That's a very good question, because I think he was worried that he might endorse the loser. But what happened is that this so poisoned the liberal vote in that ward. On Porter's Park and up around Edgebrook, there's a good number of Obama Democrats. And this was just relentless. Every week you had John Arena with 4 or 5 pieces about Republican John Garrido and Democrat John Arena, and it was just relentless.
Who put that piece out? Maybe that was put out
SEIU. SEIU. There was 17 mailings in that ward, so you think they'd do overkill in the 6th ward. 17 mailings in the 45th ward alone. And they were accusing Garrido of having a contribution from somebody who was involved in the parking meter deal. I mean, a contribution. So you had big pictures of the parking meter and John Garrido with people with his hand in people's pockets. It was a very nasty campaign.
There were
29 votes separates the candidates right now.
Right, that's right. So
It's still
what
not
is the
resolved.
status there? Is it going to go to
Well,
recount?
there's about 60 provisional and absentee ballots that are as yet uncounted, which should be certified by today or tomorrow. Then after that, it goes to a recount.
Ben Jarosky wrote in the Reader that he actually kind of liked both candidates. They're both sort of community-based people, and both were very deeply involved in all of the battling that's been going on for the last decade about the Six Corners area, the Irving Park in Milwaukee, where there's been just no development or nothing to speak of for years, despite all the money that's been dumped in there. And Arena was one of the people who Garrido claimed was one of the people who blocked everything because, well, anyway, that, and on it goes.
But the union spent almost $500,000. They spent over $200,000 for Marina Fast Harper in the primary, and another $250,000 to $300,000 for Arena right now.
And lost.
Well, actually, for all that money, they have a 29-vote victory. On a per-vote basis, that certainly is not very economically well spent.
I've mentioned on the program before that I live in the fighting 38th Ward, the home of the relentless Cullerton machine, and Russ and I were talking a little bit beforehand about this. I cannot believe the amount of money that was spent on Cullerton's campaign, where he had, I don't know, 48% of the vote going into this thing, so it didn't seem like there was any chance he could lose. But it was brutal. We actually had a police officer, not in uniform, but a police officer come to our door, knock on the door, identify himself as a Chicago police officer, and warn us that if we didn't vote for Cullerton, that a slumlord would be taking over our ward, and that our ward would basically go to hell, and we'd have no police officers.
That's a great piece of. I would have written a blog about that.
It was relentless, but of course
Should have got his name.
Right, he won big time.
And Rahm gave him a lot of money.
Yes.
And I think if you had to pick the winner in Tuesday's race who looks most like the idea of a Chicago alderman, it's Cullerton.
It's Tim Cullerton.
And but he seems to me, in reading about him, to be quite unsure of whether he even wanted to be the alderman.
He seems very ambivalent about it. He claims very much that he never wanted to, but it just kind of came. It kind of like Roderick Sawyer.
Well,
the day came and he had to do it.
And it goes back to one of the things Russ said on the other show about how long a Cullerton has been in that seat. So obviously it was just meant for him.
But what's odd is that everybody spends so much time negatively defining, not themselves, but negatively defining their opponent.
Right.
And that seems to be the temper of politics right now in Chicago.
Yeah.
Go for the jugular, make people repel people from your opponent. And that's why turnout was way down. The opposition, people who didn't vote for the two runoff candidates, most of them stayed away.
Yeah.
Over half that vote didn't vote.
Let's take the helicopter shot here and try to see if we can figure any of this
Can we
out.
say anything about the 25th, though?
Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh,
how
yeah,
could we not do
exactly.
that?
And you wrote about that.
The 25th was
war.
interesting because
An environmentalist was born.
yes, Solis, the new environmentalist. I think it will be
he flip-flopped. He flip-flopped. He wasn't born. What was it, an epiphany they call it?
It was an epiphany.
Well, it was
It would be-
epiphany.
it's
He
going
wasn't
to
going to
be-
win
Yeah.
if he
It's going to
didn't.
be worth watching to see whether he pushes this clean power ordinance. And given that his biggest contributors were the lead polluters and the other emission polluters, but what I Morphine, T-Mock is his nickname, Morphine, is an impressive guy, and he's already told me, his press secretary told me he's going to run in 4 years. He lost
they're
in
getting started.
Chinatown.
Yeah.
And in in China, they kind of hinted that there were some improprieties, but unless they're going to do something with it, I said I'm not going to do anything with that until there's some evidence. But he did very well in the Hispanic precincts,
Morphine did.
especially Morphine did, especially in Pilsen. And
can
in
you believe it-
in the first election, in the primary election, it was 49 to 28, I think. Solis and just barely missed winning that outright. But in this runoff, it was much closer. They were both in the 30s.
Well,
But can you
he had
believe that
54% of the
that it
vote.
would take, though, a runoff for him to understand an issue that obviously his constituents feel very passionate about?
Absolutely, and that's why Morphine did so well. And Solis admitted on February 22nd, just after he was pushed into this runoff, that he hadn't worked hard enough.
paid much attention,
And then he admitted that he hadn't understood how important it was that people's children and the elderly and everybody in that ward could breathe clean air, especially when it came out that the elementary school in Pilsen, the Perez Elementary School, had high levels and had people with
Carol is right, because Midwest Generation gave him over $50,000.
about 52 grand.
They're the people who.
So how do
They
you
own the
explain it?
fist
How do you
cold
explain
house.
that duplicity right now? He takes the money, then he suddenly says, well, I was wrong. Is he going to give back the money? Of course he's not going to give
Right.
it back.
He gave back $1,000,
Well,
but
that's
if
1/50th,
if you're a politician, you and this is a broad generalization, but one trait you have to have is no shame. Otherwise, you couldn't.
Well, it's interesting to me that the ward itself is so bifurcated. I mean, I remember actually doing some work with him on another project at another point, and he was saying how the sort of the Cermak Bridge is kind of like he's got this whole constituency in Chinatown, then he's got the constituency in Pilsen, and they don't necessarily have the same needs or demands, but he was spending a lot of time really massaging that Chinatown side, and it apparently helped him out in this.
Well, that could be put into a
and he's
new
been
ward
there
on the
for a
remap.
And I was
number
going
of
to say,
years. He's been there a long time.
and during the ward remap, a lot of this it may not be the same case.
Right.
So that if Morphine decides to run in 4 years, he may have that advantage.
He might have that. And I also think some credit has to be given to the Tribune for that excellent piece that they did. We just made reference to it.
Yes.
I think that really began to turn things around significantly, because when you actually look at the numbers, and here you've got kids in an elementary school who are at some hugely exaggerated risk of lead poisoning because of this coal plant, and so on and so forth. That really begins to turn
And of
things
course,
around.
when you have a piece like that comes out in the paper, automatically it becomes a political piece.
It becomes-
so
right,
you
right,
immediately
right.
Came out
distribute
on
that.
Friday.
Right.
Yeah,
Came
and
out
it-
on Friday,
and it did.
It was a
Right.
blockbuster. Maybe it'd come out a week before.
Oh, it probably would have turned things.
A very good point. So again, like I said, let's sort of jump in the helicopter and get the big picture of this to the extent that we can. 18 aldermen who were not in the council on the election 4 years ago are taking their seats in May. That may or may not be historic, but it's big. It means something. But it occurs to me, and I have nothing to back this up. This is just a feeling I have, that's not so much because of the public rising up and saying we want something new. More than anything, it's because a whole bunch of aldermen decided to call it quits when Daley quit. I mean, very important aldermen: Schiller, Rugai, Vi Daley, Marianne Smith, and I know I'm missing about 4 or 5 others, but there were a bunch of pretty significant, hefty aldermen who just said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Well, and the question is, why didn't somebody like Bernie Stone follow their lead and avoid a rather embarrassing situation?
Right.
Oh, he'll get his own show on WSAM.
The Bernie Stone Show.
As I mentioned,
I'm sure we'll be on it very soon, Carol.
Russ, I think you're an endangered species because you work on the Northwest side as a political pundit, and he said today he wants to be a political pundit, so I think he's coming up.
Well, luckily, I'm a few years younger than he is, so maybe I have longevity on my side.
You might outweigh him.
But Bernie Stone was supported by as smart a guy as Ed Burke, who must have realized that Bernie Stone this was going to be his last election. It's interesting to me that
they were at a fundraiser for him, weren't they?
But I'm sure they had
They were at a fundraiser for Bernie Stone, didn't they? I
Yes,
think Ed Burke and a lot of other.
But I'm sure those are the 2 longest serving aldermen. There was a relationship there, and he wasn't going to go against him, especially since Rahm was against him.
But in some races, Rahm and Ed Burke, which is going to be the story to watch now, it's going to be a lot of fun to see those two. I think they'll get along quite well. Were on the same side, and sometimes they were on opposing sides. And the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times, I went through and looked to see in every runoff which paper endorsed whom. They were often on different sides. It's really interesting. I don't think it matters who they endorse, but
we were talking earlier about Bernie Stone, about Winston Towers, and that was his base, because Bernie is a Reform Jew.
He lives there.
And Silverstein is an Orthodox Jew, and in the Orthodox Jewish precincts, she ran very well. So in this case, you had a choice between 2 Jews. 4 years ago, you had a choice between Bernie Stone and an Asian American woman, so that the Jewish vote consolidated behind Stone. This time they had a choice. They said, Bernie, enough. I mean, 38 years is long enough.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he won his own building, which is a complete precinct, by only like 17 votes, so it was pretty tough. So what are these 14 people going, or 18 new people, what does this mean? This is the thing that I'm trying to figure out, and I guess the Tribune's trying to figure it out too. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Will this mean anything that there are these new people who are less experienced, whether that means anything? Do we care?
You've got a less experienced mayor and a less experienced city council. So I think some of the more experienced aldermen are going to start feeling their oats. And I mean, I've talked to some of them, and they really believe, I don't think they believe correctly necessarily, but they really believe that it's going to be a case of strong city council, weak mayor. And
I don't think so.
In their dreams, that's not, that's an oxymoron in Chicago.
I know, but I am hearing them say that, and I'm sitting there in disbelief every time they say this to me, but I know that it's something that they believe.
I think we're going to see the old Rahm emerge.
Oh, exactly.
And I miss him.
The egg is going to crack.
I think he was much more interesting before. I think he is going to crack a hard whip.
Yeah.
And I think that Rahm is going to be mayor 1 term, maybe 2 terms, and then his plan is to go to Washington.
To run for president.
He has to run for governor first. He has to run for governor.
I don't think he's going to run for governor.
I think he's going to run for president. Just like Giuliani.
Why would he have to run? Why would he have to run for governor?
Governor's a weakling.
Yeah.
Governor Jello. He wants to follow Governor Jello.
This is all good news for future Mayor Sawyer, apparently. Then, right? He's just got to sit it out for one. But seriously, I want to talk about Charles Ramsey. I know that no one here has any particular insight. No one has any inside information on this, but I was watching the website yesterday for the Philadelphia Channel 7, basically in Philadelphia, and they were almost ecstatic. I mean, the people in the mayor's press conference gave him a standing ovation because he was staying in Philadelphia. And now it turns out that he denied it on the podium in Philadelphia, but now the Sun-Times and the Tribune have the story that he was actually asking $400,000 to come here.
Didn't Jody Weiss get about $295,000?
He got 310. And he was supposed to take on Homeland Security as well, and then Mayor Daley pushed him out of that job.
I guess Ramsey thought if an inexperienced person could get 310, certainly an experienced person should get 400,000. Right.
You know, I mean, he's 63 years old. I never thought that Emanuel was going to appoint
Ramsey? Oh, you didn't?
I did not.
Oh,
but I
okay.
happened to have been, I was in Philadelphia. My son goes to school in Philadelphia. I was there last week visiting him, and it was amazing how much attention Ramsey got there. He is a hero. And
Well,
he's
he
very,
played it well, didn't he? He
What's
played it
done,
very
Carol?
well in Philadelphia.
Why is he so popular? I mean, what innovations has he made?
Well, I've been listening to my son. Philadelphia is a scarier place than Chicago is, so I don't know. But he's close to Mayor Nutter.
I was going to say.
Yeah, Mayor Michael Nutter of Philadelphia, and I don't think he was close to Rahm Emanuel. And I think Emanuel's going to bring in some young, energetic
And Mayor
guy.
Nutter is very popular, and to show you his popularity, I mean, you know, he supported Hillary Clinton in the presidential race and received no repercussions as a result of that.
Yeah,
so that
yeah,
shows you
yeah.
that the kind of personality and the kind of support he has from his constituents in the city of Philadelphia, because they obviously think he's doing a good job.
And he was popular in Washington, D.C., where he was before he went to
So did
Philadelphia.
Ramsey just play Nutter? I mean, he took a couple of weeks of basking in this, and then he got a
about a
$50,000
raise.
raise yesterday,
Right, exactly.
and a signed baseball or something. So what is this? Is this a defeat for Rahm Emanuel, or I mean, is he upset and ticked off today?
Oh, I don't
I think it's a victory.
No, I don't think
he,
it's
then
a
he,
defeat.
he does, because I believe that he didn't want Ramsey, and now he doesn't have to insult Ramsey and the people
Wow.
who support him by not picking him. I have a feeling
But I
Rahm's
don't
going to
think
There
bring
also
in
could be some racial politics too, because he looked for a black police superintendent. If he couldn't get the best, he can probably find a white superintendent with less repercussion.
Well, I don't think that it was any of that, personally. I think he wanted Ramsey because this was someone he wanted in terms of, I think, to address the morale issue. And he wanted to bring somebody back who they respected, since they didn't respect Jody Weiss. I think that was part of
beat
that.
cop.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But
No,
in
that's
terms
true.
of, but when you look at the other names that are coming up, Michael Shields, that name and the association with Obama, I mean, that is not a popular sentiment within the police department. I mean, you've got people like Ernest Brown and some of these other guys who have been around a long time. I think that now he's going to have to turn his attention to the people who are within the Chicago Police Department.
Hillard's not going to stick around, is
Oh,
he?
no, I don't
that,
think
that's for sure. Hillard is just.
And I
temporary.
think after this thing with the police and the rape, he's
Right.
probably saying, "Oh, why did I even do this in
Can
the
you
first
imagine?
place?"
Yeah, it's like, you know, the whole time Jody Weiss was in, he didn't have anything like that, and all of a sudden Hillard comes in, and within 2 weeks he's got these heater cases that. Well, anyway, so we have a new council, we will have a new police superintendent, we'll have a new mayor, and where it goes, nobody knows.
The problem is that in the city council,
and the
in
Board
city
of
council-
Education.
in the city council, again, the mayor basically controls the agenda. The city clerk publishes the journal after the council approves. Then they have a consent agenda. So many of the items are simply presented, and it's a yay or a nay, and there's not much debate. So there has to be a reformation of how the council
So
operates.
this is going to be interesting times.
It
certainly.
is going to be very interesting times. I hope you'll all come back again. We'll make this like a regular feature because I really enjoy talking to the three of you. And the three of you are, of course, Delmarie Cobb, a political consultant. Carol Felsenthal from Chicago Magazine has been here today. Thank you, Carol. And Russ Stewart from Nadig Newspapers. I'm Ken Davis. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's a community service of CAN TV. You can find us here all the time on cable, 6:30 on Thursdays. But you can also see this and other programs online at cantv.blip.tv. Check us out here. Subscribe on iTunes. Listen to the audio podcast. Listen to the video podcast. Go to your bank. We'll be standing there, changing whatever. Glad to have you with us. We'll see you next week. Thanks.